Welcome to Beefmaster Banner. We are your hosts, Josh Morrison and Jared Strickland. How's it going, Jared?
That's going good, man.
That last episode left me really excited for this one. So
Oh yeah.
hopefully it'll be just as good and folks will get just as much out of it. Before we get started, I want to thank our show sponsors. The Southeastern Beefmaster Breeders Association. Be on the lookout for their sale and convention coming up August 26th. Emmons Ranch Beefmasters. There's not a whole lot to say that people don't know about Emmons. They've been around a long time and they have good cattle. They've got a couple sales, I think, coming up still this year. So keep a check out for them. Lissy Beefmasters, they've got a couple sales coming up this year also. And got, again, really, just really good stuff. Something for everybody. Like to thank C&M Ranches, the Chick family, for sponsoring us. They've got cattle all over the place anymore, and they've got a sale coming up here too. So, lastly, Jones Beefmasters, Mr. Clark, thank you for sponsoring our show. They've got some bulls selling at the Flint Hills Classic, and they've got some bulls selling, or they've got their production sale, excuse me, coming up in the end of June. So keep a lookout for that. But tonight we've got Dr. Ty Davis on again. How's it going, Ty?
Going good, man. Yeah, excited to be back on here.
I keep forgetting you tell me not to say doctor. You just say to tell you Ty. So.
Yeah, no, it's all good. I don't want to be
who
those guys that keep throwing in people's face. So I just bring it up once and we'll move on.
gotta know who we're dealing with.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it's a big accomplishment. There's not a lot of folks that could say that. So I always say own it.
Yeah.
But in the last episode, we talked pretty much solely about feed. We didn't really hit hay or minerals, which is what we're going to hit tonight. So starting out, let's just talk hay quality. Why is knowing your hay quality important? Why is it important knowing what kind of hay you've got?
Yeah, this is I think it's one of the best tools that the cattle producer can have in their pocket. And the good thing about it is it's pretty cheap. Knowing your hay and your forage quality, first of all, helps you plan on what kind of supplementation you're going to have to do. Helps you know if you've made improvements from last year to this year, or what improvements you need to make in your forage. But as well with that, knowing your hay quality, you can plan as far as what hay and when to feed it. So if you're buying hay from several different places, or you bought it from one guy and he's got it from a couple of different fields, or you raise it from a few different fields, from there you can plan it according to your cow's calving schedule. So if you have some really top-notch stuff, you're going to want to save that for that last trimester going into calving and rebreeding, because that's when you're going to get the most use out of it. If you got some stemmy stuff that you just need to get out of your fields, you can feed that in that first trimester time, where her requirements aren't nearly as high, and you're not going to hurt her, from an efficiency standpoint. So, that's a big point of the hay quality, is you can use it in a more strategic manner.
I like your answer there. That's kind of the answer. For those that don't know, I'm an extension agent and been doing that for about 5 years. And I went and gave my first forage talk and hay quality talk about 5 years ago, and I got to doing on the how you need to check your hay and all that stuff. And probably 5 minutes into it, one guy raised his hand and said, "Well, why do I need to check my hay? I got to feed it anyway, because that's all I got, And I tried to give him kind of the answer you just give there, and I'll never forget that. But anyway, that's a good way of looking at it. Is like you're saying, if you just if you don't test, it's just a guess, is what I tell people, and that's a good way of putting it. Is that $15 or $20 test or whatever it costs, it may save you a lot of money or make you spend a lot of money, but at least you know what you're doing.
In the guy's defense, he's not wrong.
Well, he was right. As far as he's going to have to feed the hay, but like Ty said, you may want to know which hay to feed first or last.
Right. Yeah. And maybe it makes me a bad feed rep, but you save your good stuff for the end. You're not going to have to supplement them nearly as much.
No, I
right.
agree. We get into talking about testing hay and hay and grain, and a cattleman has got to be a jack of all trades, essentially. I mean, they've got to be a weatherman. They've got to be, an environmentalist. They've got to be, they've got to learn. I don't know that you ever stop learning in this business just because of that.
Now, don't forget we're gamblers too, because we're always gambling on that part of it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So getting into, nutritional value, testing hay, what, we hear TDN and we hear other things, but I would say there's a lot of people out there that have no idea what they even need. I mean, they may test their hay, but they may have no idea what to even look for in their hay. What can you kind of give us a rundown on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few things you can look at there and make your get some information out of it. Really, the two big ones to take away from your hay is TDN and free protein. Those are the two big ones to look at, and then you can dive into the weeds with the NDF values and the ADF, as well as the vitamins and minerals present in that forage. But the two big ones really to pay attention to are TDN and free protein. And thinking about what you want to see in your hay, that's often different from what we get, particularly here out east. But if you're thinking about you're in that first trimester, you can get away with a hay that's in that 8 to 10% free protein mark, as well as a TDN in those high 40s. It's not the best quality, but it'll get them through just fine in that first trimester and into that first half of the second. But when you get closer, in that third trimester into calving, yeah, you're going to want that crude protein to be around 13% or, TDN of, 56 or above. And if not, you're oftentimes going to be supplementing with those numbers. That can vary if you're feeding something like baleage or something like that, where, the hay's a bit more digestible. But those are the rough numbers I use. And it tends to work pretty well.
Well, and I know people hear TDN, that just means total digestible nutrients, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And maybe something else real quick on that is, like, if you have leftover hay from the year before to this year, does it drop a lot in nutrients as far as feeding it, this year? You don't want to just get rid of it because you never know when you may get a drought and not have anything to eat. But does it drop? Does the nutrients drop a lot year to year?
The vitamins and minerals certainly will. Free protein and TDN, that's got a lot to do with how you stored it. You left it out there in the field. Yeah, it's definitely going to drop, a significant margin. You have it put up pretty well in a barn. It's not getting rained on. And it's off the ground. It's going to drop some for sure, but not that drastically. That outer shell will certainly do it, but when you get inside the hay like that, it won't be that drastic. And again, it goes back to hay testing. Test it again. Find out.
That's good. But like you said, when I tell folks, the main way to keep the hay quality as high as you can is definitely storage. If it's outside, you're going to lose a lot. If it's in a dry barn, you're going to be able to use it. So just remember
Obviously,
that.
Well, I guess you want to use that older hay first.
Yeah, if you have outside hay, stored hay, use it as quick as you can.
Yep.
Versus
absolutely.
start. And definitely put your poor quality hay outside.
Yeah.
It don't break down as fast.
Yeah, if you're stuck on storage, yeah, it's another good way to use it.
Well, and Jared and I had talked about it before. I've been at fault. I haven't tested hay like I should because I never really knew about it until Jared and I started talking about it. And I said, well, what if your TDN is, or I can't remember which one it was, isn't quite right. He said, well, it may just be as simple as cutting it a little earlier or a little later. It just depends. There's all kind of things you can do. So it's not that your field's just bad, all the time. It's just you may need to adjust a few things here and there.
Yeah, now sometimes it gets wet and you can't get in that field. Yeah, it's certainly part of it too.
Yeah, kind of going on the lines with that. In one of my classes that we give or whatever, I got 2 samples. I got lucky getting them, and they're off the same farm, same fertilizer rate, same everything. The only difference was about 3 weeks in timing as far as cutting. And sample A versus sample B, the one that got cut 3 weeks later is way, way worse,
Mm-hmm.
and the nutrient values there, it's just not accessible.
Right.
Lignan's too high, stuff like that. So timing of cutting your hay, I think, obviously Ty can allude more to that here in a minute, but that's kind of really what sets your or quality or nutritional value is when you cut it.
Yeah, I'm not a forage expert by any means on when and when not to cut hay. It's but as that grass becomes more mature, it certainly depletes in quality.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the next question that goes along with that, and I don't know whichever one of you want to answer this at this point. How does somebody test their hay? Where do they get their, where do they get that? Where do they send it to?
Yeah, so biggest thing, just invest in a hay probe. Pretty simple. You can I like to use the Colorado one, but I test quite a bit of hay. So that, a high quality one like that gets me a lot further. They got some cheaper ones. I think Valley Vet has one that's pretty decent. And it just hooks right into your cordless drill and drill all the way through it. And, if you make sure you take several samples, not just from one bale, I think that's important because there'll be some variation in between them. Mix it together and send it out. I personally like to use, I use Dairy One. They're out of New York. But Jared, speaking to you, I think it's important to talk to your, extension agent or your local feed store and find out where they send it and see if you can't tack it on to wherever they're sending it to. Another thing I like to use, I like to test using the wet chemistry method instead of the NIR. Tends to be a bit more accurate. You pay a little bit more for it, but it is more accurate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. A lot of folks do use the NIR because it is cheaper, but like you said, you'll get more accuracy out of the wet chemistry test.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the NIR. I just prefer to use the wet chemistry one.
So I guess maybe shifting gears, we're getting our hay test back, we're kind of seeing that it's maybe short of what we need. What's the best way to kind of maybe get a plan together to off of that sample? Do you go talk to the feed store? Or do you call somebody else, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the feed store or your your extension agents are probably the people to go to as far as this is what I got. How far is it going to get me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like myself, I work with multiple feed stores in the area. I've gotten that call before about this is what it is. What do you think they need from there?
So I guess what we're telling folks is if you get that hay test, you can pretty much build either a ration off of it or a program to get your cows to meet their needs, And that's why, like we said, that's why it's important to know, because if you don't, you're just guessing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and kind of going on that, we know different parts of the U.S. will use different types of hay, different strands, different grasses. In your opinion, are there any certain types of, I guess instead of hay, I guess you'd say grass, that maybe would be better than others, or is it just kind of depend on when you cut it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the easy answer is, alfalfa. That's kind of the gold standard, but that doesn't, fit. First of all, economically and nor gastrointestinally, you can't just feed alfalfa to your cows. But really, that just depends on where you're at. Out here on the East Coast, the cool season grasses are the ones that do the best, like the fescue that we graze out here. And go out to Texas, that fescue's not going to do very well with those temperatures. So that I wish I had a better answer about a couple that are specifically that work. It just depends on where you're at in the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't paint that one with a general brush. It's more localized.
It is. And, there's a few things you can look into. It's crabgrass. There's been a lot of research around crabgrass here recently. It's a heck of a forage. It does a really good job. And then you can get into your, Sudan Sudax grass, specifically for hay. That pretty well grows most anywhere as long as you have the right fertilizer and program around it. Those are some really good ones to look into. But again, it depends on where you're at.
I'll back you up on the crabgrass. I got a lot of old timers saying it's a weed, but man, it sure does stay green when it gets dry. The cows love it.
They do. It's got a great fruit protein. It's got a lot of energy to it too.
Oh yeah, and they seek it out. It's like they know it's better.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess kind of shifting gears. We haven't really talked about minerals yet, and I know Purina. That's something that they think is a good way to have a base on your cows. So what's some good ideas of maybe why is it important to have a good mineral program, even though you're doing all these other things to try to make your cows healthy?
Yeah. I mean, second, we're kind of talking 1A, 1B here. Second to your forage program, I think minerals right there next to it, as far as where you should invest your money to make your cows as productive and efficient as possible. Mineral research has been going on forever in animal science. I mean, you can find research articles back in the 40s where they were looking at supplementing phosphorus and some other minerals. And those research articles still hold true today as far as the improvements in conception rates, rate of gain, milk quality. The list goes on as far as the improvements that you can make to your cow herd through a good mineral program.
That kind of comes back to what we was talking to. It may be more localized as well. I think a good advice might be to get, with your local rep, whether with Purina or your feed store or something, and see what, especially if you're a newer breeder, figure out what maybe some deficiencies you have in the area that may be lacking in the soil or the forage that you have. That way you can kind of help set up that good program.
Yeah.
Get you set up with the right minerals.
Yeah. And, you think about the differences in, just the continental US, out here, we're supplementing selenium to the max that the FDA allows. You get out in South Dakota, they don't want any selenium because they have problems with selenium toxicity in certain parts of it. So that it's very dependent on where you're at. And, one thing to think about with, your mineral program is, first of all, that cow's needs are changing every day. She's always, if she's doing her job right, she's always going to have a calf by her side, a calf in utero, or both. So she's changing every day, and the forage that she's eating is changing every day. It's becoming more mature, or it's starting fresh growth, or it's dying off. So having that mineral program in front of her gives her that constant to know that she's meeting her needs each and every day.
How much mineral should a person keep out at a time? Should they keep it free choice? Do you recommend just feeding it? How do you recommend doing it?
Yeah, I recommend keeping it free choice at all times. If they become mineral hungry, and it's it's somewhat of a common misconception to think that they're eating it because they need it, and really it's mostly it's a salt craving that they'll have. Typically, we've kind of found out in the somewhat recent years that cows don't think that they need magnesium on a certain day, but if you allow them to run out for a couple days and you put it out there, then they're just going to hammer it that day. And you got to start that process of getting them leveled out on their consumption of that mineral. So you're best to just leave it out there, free choice at all times. And kind of a constant to everything I've been saying about mineral supplementations, they have to eat it first of all. Just because you put that mineral bag out there and it lasts you 2 months doesn't mean that they're, meeting their needs or you're doing your job as far as giving them their tools to do their job. They still have to eat it.
Oh, I agree with that. I've had issues in the past. You try to get the high magnesium, out in this early in the spring here out in the east, and sometimes they don't really like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The form of the mineral does matter. If it's, I've seen cattle, they go up there with, we'll just call it a inexpensive form of mineral, and it looks like sawdust. They get it in their nose and it's stuck on there, and it's not a good eating experience for them, so they don't want to do it again.
If it smells good enough that you want to eat it, it may be pretty good, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, I'm just gonna tell you, I haven't smelt the mineral yet that I wanted to eat.
Uh,
But that's funny because I have, kind of like Jared said, I've put out mineral before and they not hardly touch it. And then you put out different mineral and they will tear it up every single time you put it out there.
Mhm.
So
It's they got taste buds just like we do.
sometimes it makes me question them, but do you recommend a loose mineral, lick tub? What do you kind of recommend there?
Um, typically, and I can only speak to Purina in this for the specific question, but typically the loose mineral is the most economical, as far as price per pound. Um, the mineral tub I think has its place, particularly if you're dealing with weaned calves that aren't super susceptible to wanting to eat. So a mineral tub will, again, I can only speak to the Purina brands, but we have a lot of molasses in ours, which will entice them to eat it. And I think it works really well in that standpoint. And another good thing about the mineral tubs is ours are 200 pounds, as are most other mineral brands. So if you're not able, your cows are 40 minutes away, you're not able to check them all that often. Mineral tubs are a good option just because it'll last them longer, without having to make that investment in getting several mineral feeders.
kind of going like talk about you're talking about calves. Me and my buddy Weston, we do background and buying calves, and we've really started going towards when we bring them in, going to like a mineral tub because they seem to be attracted to that more, especially ones that's never had feed before. And it seems like it gets them going. I think that might be something folks might want to look at, even on weaning calves or something that's come off straight off of grass and never had feed. That tub may be something to look at doing too.
Yeah, no, I'm a big proponent of mineral tubs when it comes to weaned calves. Just like you said, Jared, they tend to hit it better, and honestly, even in cows, I mean, I've seen it. They do hit mineral tubs more consistently than they do the loose mineral. So there's something to be said for that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think especially when you're talking about calves, I mean that consumption rate in the very beginning is important. You know, they're going through that stress period and they need that mineral for sure.
Absolutely.
I kind of like to have you back on later in the year when we get one into hay feed season. It's kind of this time of year, Uh,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. For sure. Maybe feeding calves out, getting to where Jared's talking about background of calves and that kind of thing is, if you would be willing to do that, that would be something really cool, to come back and do for sure.
Yeah, of course. No, I'd absolutely love to.
We appreciate you being on for both episodes. But before we go, we ask everybody the same question, um, every episode, and it's what is one piece of advice you would give to a new breeder?
Yeah. I guess there's a few, kind of the one that I suppose encapsulates it all. It's really look at your program, and really evaluate what your nutritional program is and what it's getting you. Look at, just because it's the cheapest doesn't mean it's the best. Just because it's the most expensive doesn't mean it's the right one for you. So look at what your conception rates are, what your weaning rates are. Are they where you want it to be? Are they reasonable? Are there improvements to make? And are those improvements going to be the most efficient from your dollar?
I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, I like that. And I may have said this before, but it's important to know you're gonna make you're gonna make mistakes. It's just part of life, but it's learning from those mistakes, and especially when like in these last two episodes we've talked about feed, hay, and minerals. If something's not working, don't be afraid to change it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. No, give it a shot. It's, you know, this is it's your operation. You need to make the best you can. Um, don't be stuck just on that price tag. That price tag's important. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes it's you're better off bumping them up in quality.
You may have to spend a little extra money now, but in the long run, it's gonna probably make you more money than what you spent there.
Yeah, that's right. An open cow is really expensive. It's a lot more expensive than a couple bags of mineral.
Yeah, you got that right.
That's exactly right. But
especially these days.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. But Ty, we really appreciate you coming on, especially hanging with us through both of these episodes. Sometimes makes it easier on us, because we already know what's happening in the next episode. So, but we really appreciate it. Thanks for taking time out of your evening to come on with us, and hopefully we'll have you on later this year for a little more conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, I'm looking forward to next time.
Yeah, we sure appreciate it.
Yeah, sounds great. And we'll see everybody on the next episode. Thanks. Well, we want to thank everybody for listening to the Beefmaster Banner podcast. Please know that we are on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and we are on YouTube. Just search Beefmaster Banner. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. We love hearing from you. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.